Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Today, we are here to talk through the latest from the Big Brother Canada 11 house. We are RHAP as a podcast, and I am Taran Armstrong, here to talk about the March 31st daily drop with events that took place on March 30th, which was yesterday, which was Thursday, after the non-eviction. So we've got some stuff to talk about. There's an anonymous HOH. We've got basically just speculation on who the anonymous HOH is and what they might do. And to do that with me today is Pooya. How you doing, Pooya?
Doing well, Taran. You know, this is the good job for me as the Masked Singer connoisseur, the detective in the building. Let's figure out this whodunit together. Should be fun.
Let's do it. So, as you all know by now, probably, Zach quit the game on, we believe, Wednesday, and then nobody was evicted on Thursday. So both Vanessa and Zach now out of the house. There is a new HOH, but this new HOH is an anonymous week, invisible, anonymous HOH, whatever you want to call it. Based on what I can gather from the discussion about the HOH competition, I believe, and I'll tell you the clues that led me to this conclusion, but I believe that the competition for HOH was something along the lines of from 1 to 50,000, how many dollars would you be willing to give up for this HOH? They all then put in a number, and either whoever's number was closest to the average won the HOH, or they then also chose what they thought the average would be, and whoever was closest to the average won the HOH. I do not believe they actually lost $50,000 to become HOH. I think that they just, I think it's just whoever was closest to the average, but I'm not sure. But it definitely had something to do with the average. And either way, nobody knows exactly who won it.
Yeah, we got a lot of numbers and decimals thrown in our faces in this hour and a half block here. And I do think you're onto something. I think it has to either the tiebreaker was something like that, or it was an exercise of how much money would you sacrifice from the prize pot, 50,000 being the most, because we do get a lot of conversation where someone's like, I didn't expect anyone to do 50. And also, I'm stupid for not doing 50. So, and then the average was maybe 49. So
49 seemed to be the average. So
yeah,
we're led to the conclusion that everyone who either gave up 50 or guessed 50 were all tied for the win. And then somehow they picked one of the people that said 50.
yeah, who knows?
That seems to be the case. So again, I'll walk you through the clues that led us in that direction. But first, we have to talk about what we saw. And the first thing we saw was Ty and Claudia. Doesn't seem like they're broken up.
No, it doesn't.
Bit cuddly. Ty says to Claudia, he hopes that with Zach gone, the women will feel more comfortable being a unit. And she says, you know, I was surprised at how sad I was at the thought of you being gone from this house, Ty. And they do a long hug.
Big long hug. I think the scare of Ty leaving and the realization, oh wow, I had quite a bit of feelings about that, may have pushed them back together here. I do think that this is definitely something we got to look into. The deleted scenes meant nothing, Taran. The breakup did not happen. These two are indeed two peas in a pod for right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the best indicator of feelings. I think that, like, we've seen people upset about a floaty leaving the house before, and I'm not talking about Kyle. She says she thinks that group can work. That group of essentially what is being proposed here is what happened, we're kind of gathering at the end of last week, was that Zach and Ty and Dan were all, the three of them were pitching to team up with the girly pops, the women, Renee, Shania, and Claudia. Shania having Dan, Claudia having Ty, and Renee having Zach. And so Claudia says, I think that group can work. The only issue now is that Renee might feel like Shania has Dan and I have you, which leaves her out. And Ty's like, well, she messed that up for herself because she could have had Zach. And Claudia's like, sure. But here's the thing. I do think Daniel would work with us. So That would make it us against Kuzi, Anika, Hope, and Jonathan, which sucks because I didn't want to be against Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan being the main one that she's upset about potentially not working. Also, notice Santina not mentioned, but also very much in the house still.
Yeah. So, at the very least, this is what Claudia is pitching to Ty. Now, how much Claudia actually buys into this, still to be determined a little bit. There's going to be a much more clarifying conversation with Renee a little bit later. But this was a little surprising to me. I was expecting Claudia to play a little more neutrally. The way that she's talking and hanging out with Ty definitely feels like she is more firmly on the side of Ty and Dan than she is on the side of Kuzi and Anika, which I was kind of hoping that that was locked down after what happened. But as we'll get through in the drop, it does appear to be that that Kuzi and Danica are now seen as a pair together. Daniel not seen as with them as much anymore, and they're also not super tight with the women after last week. It seemed like perhaps there was an alliance brewing. That alliance seems to be no more.
Yeah, which is unfortunate that we didn't get to an eviction vote, because I feel like that's kind of one of the ways you both prove your allegiances and maybe solidify some bonds, and that's no longer there. And part of me feels like that unknown could have led to this. In addition to obviously coming to the realization of like, hey, if there's like, let's say 6, 7 of us, whatever, are we going to be able to are we going to be in the bottom half or the top half? And I feel like right now they're thinking, let's do a different coalition, which is not a bad shout, because let's say Ty does stay, right, this week. As the girly pops, you're like, yeah, they're going to put Ty up next. He's going to be the target. We're fine. Like, we don't have to worry about anything. Now, how much are they going to keep these, quote, lines under wraps is going to be key, because if they're able to hide that and still put on a front that they're dealing and wanting to work with the girls here, not a bad shout, but we'll have to wait and see. It was interesting to me, though, the stick out being that they don't want Jonathan to be not in the group with them.
That's again, that's the surprising thing to me, is that I figured that there was a lot of work done between Kuzi and the women. And so if Claudia was going to say it sucks that I have to be against a person, I figured it would have been Claudia, Kuzi. Granted, she's talking to Ty, and Ty is obviously anti-Kuzi now, so it wouldn't make sense for her to say that. However, it is again kind of confirmed later in her talk with Renee. Now we cut away from the Ty and Claudia conversation to get to Jonathan and Hope. And I'm going to condense most of Jonathan and Hope's conversations into one here, because we come back and forth quite a lot. We start off right away with Jonathan saying to Hope, "When I know, you'll know, but it's not the enemy. It's not the enemy." Saying essentially, when I know who the HOH is, I will tell you. But I can tell you that the enemy, aka Dan, Ty, whoever else, does not have the HOH. Hope says, "How do you know?" Jonathan says, "I just know. Trust me. Don't say anything to anybody, okay? Just trust me. Let me work. Take it easy. You're good. I promise." Hope says, "Okay, well, if you got it, I'm so proud of you." And Jonathan's like, "Shh."
How's that snack, Hope? How's that wrap you're having? It's a big wrap, by the way, while they're talking about this. But yeah, Hope can't contain his excitement, but also Jonathan trying to get as close to saying something without saying something.
Yes. So this tells us right away Jonathan's confidence. There's theoretically, I think, 3 things that could possibly be true given this conversation. One, kind of the most obvious, Jonathan is the HOH.
Right.
And he's trying to tell Hope without telling Hope. Maybe he's not allowed to tell Hope. Maybe he just wants to keep it a secret as much as possible. But he clearly feels very confident about the fact that he's good, Hope is good, and he's very happy about the direction he thinks this HOH will go. So the most obvious answer is that he's the HOH and he's in control of it. Option number 2, theoretically, he could be telling the truth and he just knows that somebody else has it. I don't believe him when he says he doesn't know who has it. I don't believe him for a second. He's way too confident to not know who has it for sure, to only know that a couple people don't have it. He's way too confident, way too happy. He has to know who has it. If I were to guess, if it were possible that somebody else has it and they confided in Jonathan, my best guess would be Santina. I think that Santina is somebody else that later is mentioned as having guessed 50. And she also, when talking to Ty in just a little bit, is very much like, I didn't even know at all what I was doing. I wrote 10500. I can't even do any math. Numbers are just so confusing to me. And also didn't seem to have much worry in the world. So it's possible that Santina one confided in Jonathan, and Jonathan knows that Santina's about to get one over on Ty and Dan or something along those lines. I don't think that's quite as likely given that we spent all of our time on Jonathan, but theoretically possible. Third, and probably least likely option, is that Jonathan is just very confused. This is not impossible, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that Jonathan just completely misread something or completely misunderstood something and thinks he knows where the HOH is, but he actually doesn't. In which case, who knows?
If it's option number 3, his confidence is very much, deceiving, because again, with chest, he's saying all this stuff. And I like the shout on Santina, because I feel like Santina, we've seen her be in a panic, and I don't see Santina in a panic right now at all. Like the whole night, the whole clip, none of that seemed to be there. But, and I theorized about this during this, the last 24 hours of, if it is a secret, are they going to want us to know? Are they going to just avoid giving us any footage of the person who has it? But looking at it on the other side, I feel like they're heavily trying to hint that it's Jonathan based on how much we got from him. But also after this last
they're
week,
trying to trick us.
Yeah, after this last week, can we trust it? We can't. We have no idea. For all we know, it's like, all right, yeah, Hope won it. Somehow they decided, okay, Hope, you can compete anyway. We were just lying. Go for it. Who knows? But if we're following it as canon, I think Jonathan and Santina are a very good shortlist to have.
Yes. Now, the only other thing that stood out to me is that a little bit later, Hope is going to say, hey, Daniel was about to tell me something. And Jonathan has a weird reaction. He's like, you? Which made me feel like that's the kind of reaction that you'd have if you were told something by Daniel and you didn't think Daniel was going to tell anybody else. But I don't know why Daniel would confide in Jonathan and not anybody else necessarily. Right. I mean, it's maybe possible that he confided in Jonathan and then also in Kuzi or some other. I don't know. It doesn't seem likely to me that those two connected and confided in the fact that they, that Daniel had the HOH and Daniel told Jonathan what his plan was. So yeah, Santina's my best guess if it's not Jonathan, but Jonathan does seem the most likely at this point. Either way, this is a weird situation where I honestly feel less sure about who has HOH and more sure about who the likely targets are. Because regardless of who is HOH, it does seem likely, given Jonathan's confidence, that Dan and or Ty or both, that already covered it, I don't know why I said or both, are going to be on the block and or targeted.
Yeah, it felt very much like this is going to be the chalk pick. This is what's going to happen. I'm thinking about the thing about Daniel and if Daniel was it, would he confide in Jonathan? No, but I think he would confide in Kuzi, who would then confide in Jonathan because he seems like a trusty guy. And then that's how Jonathan's in the know. But then who knows at this point? But I feel like the energy in the house was giving me that, yeah, Ty is not going to be not on the block this week as of right now.
Yes. So we cut away, we come back. Hope says, what makes you say that about the HOH? Jonathan says, just trust me. I can't say a lot. Hope says, well, I don't know, because Ty and Claudia were getting real cozy in that nook. And Jonathan says, I really don't think they have it, man. I'm not sure. I just don't think so. Just let me poke around a bit. And Hope says, but Dan is moving around super cocky too. Dan, he only talks to me when he's doing bad, and he's not talking to me. So I don't know.
He was making a whole lasagna in the kitchen, so man was busy. Hope, come on.
Yeah, they talk about the HOH competition. Some people took forever. Jonathan says he never thought some people would bet 50. He bet 50 immediately, but he didn't win. He was surprised that the average was 49. So Hope says, when you saw the 50 check, you thought you won? And he was like, I did, bro. I thought I did, but I didn't win. And then later again, Hope says, I just want to know, bro. And Jonathan says, we're good there. I just don't know who got it, but it's not the girls. I'll tell you that. It's not Claudia. It's not Shania. I don't know about Renee. Hope says, yeah, I don't know about Renee either. She told me we were supposed to check in with each other, and we never do that. And Jonathan says, just be careful. And Hope says, I'm just going to trust you this week, man. It's your show. Jonathan says, mm-hmm.
It is. And again, if I'm Hope, I'm the least worried of anybody in this house. No one's going to be sussing me, and I can just slide back and relax. So Hope, take the energy down a level. Just chill. Just play some pool, confide in Jonathan, and you're fine. Everything's fine.
We cut away. We come back. Hope is saying, I think you won that comp for real. For real? And they're doing this for real thing a lot.
Oh, God, it was a lot of for reals. It really was.
He says, the camera's been following you around for real, bro. And Jonathan's like, I did not win it. I wanted it more than anyone else, but I did not get it. Hope says, I refuse to believe it's not you. He's like, it's not me. Hope says, well, look, if I go home this week, at least I know I'm worth $50K. And Jonathan says, I looked at it like, that's not money I even have yet, so why not put it up?
The correct mentality, honestly.
Yeah. Jonathan says, I mean, could you imagine if they actually took 50K out of the 100K prize?
Halved it by week 3? No. Imagine.
Jonathan says, I don't know who it is, but I know who it's not, and that makes me happy. And Jonathan says, then they go on to talk about Zach, and they talk about how Zach quit the game. And Jonathan's like, yeah, Zach quitting over principles is baloney. He just couldn't handle being evicted. He tried to control everything, and it didn't work. Simple as that.
Yeah, based on some Twitter mentions I've been getting, he may offer you a perspective, Taran. He may offer you a narrative that you may not have seen. So,
well, we didn't see everything.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta give him that.
I mean, the one season where you can say that and we're like, yeah, you're not wrong. It's this one, but I'm good with my conclusions.
Well, we're going to go to Ty and Santina. Again, they're going to talk a little bit about the competition. Ty said it had to be between $1,000 and $50,000. What do you think most people bet? Santina said, I just didn't understand it at all. And he says, well, who do you think, or she says, who do you think has it? And Ty says, I think it's Johnny. If it is him, I think he'll try to put me up. So if I go up, you know who it is. This to me is not confirmation, but definitely heavy. The fact that he didn't talk to Claudia about being HOH, the fact that he is talking about, like, if I go up, you know it's Jonathan, leads me to believe it's probably not Ty.
Yes.
On top of Jonathan saying he feels very confident. She doesn't think that Johnny would put you up. He's like, his options are limited. He's working with Hope, Kuzi, and Danica. So this is very much like a public thing now. There are sides of the house. One side is Jonathan, Hope, Kuzi, and Danica, a 4-person thing that Daniel is not getting brought up as being a part of. And he says, and he has a decent relationship with you, Santina. He's not going to put up Shania or Claudia. It's useless to put up Renee. So that leaves me and Dan.
What a read. Dude, why you talking smack on Renee like that? I don't understand it. But it's interesting, Taran, because we've talked about, and you specifically have talked about last night, your disappointment in Daniel this past week. Is Daniel in a good spot if he's not being brought up as that part of the 4? That's the question.
That's my thing. He's in a fantastic, he might be in the best spot in the house. So why is he still complaining about Zach not being there?
I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you.
I'll get, and it's tough because, like, I don't know how much I should be crediting him for this position. I think I need to credit him at least some because he clearly is the one that got in with these women. But the first thing I think we need to figure out to really determine whether he's in a great spot or just happens to be in a good spot is he actually still good with Kuzi and Danica, or has that relationship actually been damaged?
Mm-hmm.
I think we get some clues to it later, again, with the Renee and Claudia conversation. But we will have to wait and see until we get there. So that's Ty and Santina. Daniel, Kuzi, Anika, and Santina are all discussing, trying to figure out if the veto is also invisible. Also an anonymous veto, I believe, from my memory. The last time they did this in season 9, it was not. It was wasn't that the what's his name? For show. It's out the door. Rowan.
Rohan?
Rowan.
Rowan.
Right?
Yeah. For sure. Out the door. For
I was
real.
trying to remember the soundbite.
Yeah. It was Ro. Yeah, I believe so. Because it's interesting to talk about, because they do bring up a good point of like, well, if someone wins the veto and then you're trying to and they use it and then you're trying to renom and you happen to guess the right person who had the veto, they're like, well, that person can't go up. You'll know who won the veto. But then Dan later brings up, well, they could just give a list of who they want to put up and then they'll put someone up, which again, I think that would make it obvious who it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do an anonymous veto, and then if you happen to put up the person who won the veto, then guess what? You guessed it right, and you get to know who won the veto as the HOH.
And the thing is, if you're keeping your HOH a secret, you're not going to be telling anybody, because how would you know, right? Like, you can't be like, hey, listen, Daniel won it. True. Like, yeah. So
in order to rat out the veto winner, you'd have to rat yourself out as well.
Exactly. So you're not going to do that, or it depends who you are.
Yeah. So we'll find out. Claudia is going to talk with Daniel, and she says, Ty says he saw his face, and we believe they're talking about Jonathan. Daniel says, yeah, I thought he looked weird too. Daniel says, I'm embarrassed about my own guess. I did really low. And Claudia was like, me too. Oh my God. Daniel's like, I'm so dumb. Canada's going to think I'm so stupid. Like, I wouldn't have had the average anyway, but it was so dumb of me to go that low. And so they're both kind of talking about, like, they really bet low numbers, thinking like, I don't want to, do the whole 50. This is again why I feel like they're talking about they only had one guess, or the only one bet to make, and just whoever's bet was the closest to the average ended up winning. And I think they're talking about being dumb because they thought it was real. But it obviously was fake and they didn't actually have to give up the money. So why didn't they just put 50, especially since 50 was the winning number? So again, leading me to believe those things are true about the competition. He says, if it is him, Jonathan, I think he'll go, or sorry, Claudia says this. If it is Jonathan, I think he'll go for Dan and Ty. Daniel agrees. He says, man, who would have been good at that comp? Zach. I don't want to say it in front of the whole group, but I really miss Zach. I'm miserable in this house right now without him. Claudia says, part of me thinks, why didn't we keep him? But how it went down, whatever. Daniel says, yeah, how it went down screwed it all up. And she says, I know, sitting around that table today, I felt pretty good with every single person except for one. But if Zach had been there, I would have been okay. So again, we're trying to read between the lines here.
Santina?
She's talking about Santina, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That if Zach had been there instead of Santina, she would feel better. Santina is the one person in the game that she does not feel comfortable with, which kind of makes sense because she has this loose thing with Kuzi and Anika. Even if she's not into it, she feels like Kuzi and Anika will have to be, because they have to deal with Ty and Dan first. She still feels good with Jonathan herself, although I don't know if she should for too much longer, given what Jonathan says in just a little bit. And so the only person she doesn't feel good with is Santina. We're going to find out a little bit later, like, this is real, that this could have happened. And this is what I was worried about when Zach went on the block, which is that if the women decide to change their minds, Zach could stay and Santina could go. And Claudia is going to mention multiple times in the span of an hour and a half that she was heavily considering doing that, but that this whole situation with the letter got in the way. So it's possible that Zach not only quit the game, but also like prevented himself from having the votes to stay in the game by doing the whole situation in the first place.
Yeah, literally dumb, because you had 24 hours in between where you self-evicted and the eviction. 24 hours is enough time with enough budget. You could have gotten something done. Worst case scenario, you get voted out, which you were expecting if you were trying to leave, and then you get to give your perspective to every broadcast that wants to have you, and you know, you get that, or you stay in. And it sounds like you could have stayed in. It sounds like you could have stayed in. If you're as good a game player as you were saying, you could have stayed in, but you didn't, and that is unfortunate for you. Now, real quick, can we rewind and talk about Daniel? Because earlier you mentioned, I don't know if we can give him the credit because he put himself in a good spot. Did he land in it? I feel like moments like this where he is just sharing, I miss Zach, but I don't want to say it in front of other people. I think these are moments that will make others think, okay, we can have Daniel. Daniel's up for grabs because he's clearly not opening up to them. But do I think he's straying away from Kuzi and Anika? I don't think so. You know what I mean? I think these are two independent things. He's still tight with them. Anika's his final two again, right? He knows he wants Anika as his final two, but also he has this feeling about wanting, you know, missing Zach and having this connection with Zach, and can only share that with a certain group of people, potentially people who did not argue with Zach, who were not in a shouting match with Zach, right? So I think both things can be true, and I think he's kind of lucked himself into the spot a little bit, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair read. So they say they both agree it could be him, Jonathan. Claudia says, we know Santina also put 50. Us four definitely didn't put 50. So she's saying all three of the women, all three of the women of the girly pops, herself, Renee, and Shania, did not put 50, at least according to what she knows that she's telling Daniel, and she seems to trust Daniel. And Daniel's saying he didn't put 50 either. She sees them as a 4. And the girly pops plus Daniel, and all 4 of them did not put 50. Daniel says, do you think Renee is just joking about what she put? She doesn't think so. So interesting to me that Renee is the one that they're most skeptical of in terms of, like, did Renee actually not put 50, or did she actually put what she said? Renee is also the one person that Jonathan said Shania definitely didn't win. Claudia definitely didn't win. Not sure about Renee. Kind of a weird thing to say if you know you won or you know who won, unless it is Renee. But you know, just worth pointing out, just little pieces here and there that might be something probably.
Yeah, I mean, we've played enough, you know, Among Us, Goosey Stuck to be like, if people bring up other people on the suspect list and you're not on it, I'm fine to just play along with that. I don't need to now inject a conversation where I'm involved in again. I don't like that. But also, here's the thing, right? In these games, whether it's how many days are you willing to go on slop to win, or how much money are you willing to lose to win, I feel like, especially for someone like Ty, who is not only probably on the outs in the house right now, but also you just lost your closest ally, you should 100% put in 50. If Ty didn't put 50, I'm baffled at the decision. Why would you not put 50? That is the only move for you, is to put 50.
Who knows? Well, we come back to Jonathan and Hope, this time outside. And Jonathan is, surprise, saying, it's not me. I promise you, it's not me. Hope is saying, Hope says that he, like, Hope says he's asking people if it's you. And he's like, yeah, well, I know he asked Santina. So she said she didn't know who it was either. That means he doesn't have it. They're talking about Ty. So Hope is saying that Ty is asking people if it's Jonathan. And Jonathan says he knows that Ty asked Santina if it was her, which to him says that it's not Ty. Now, that's not like solid proof. And this is where, like, you could say this is evidence to options both 2 and 3. Option 3, because if this is what he's using to disqualify people, then maybe he is just, like, confused. Option 2, because if he's having these kinds of let's share information about Ty conversations with Santina, it's very possible that in that conversation, she also confessed to him that she does actually have the HOH. He says, he also says, I overheard Ty talking to Claudia. Ty was asking Claudia if any of the girls had it and said Dan didn't have it either. So it's also possible that this is where he's getting his information. This to me sounds like an excuse. Personally, it sounds like a fake bit of information to, like, give what you know that you know, but you don't want to tell people how you know it. So you give a fake reason for why you know it. Like, oh, I overheard this conversation that happened to disqualify 5 different people at one time, and I'm 100%
Right.
confident in it.
Jonathan's a big boy. Like I refuse to believe he was able to slyly just overhear stuff and no one noticed him around, you know? So I can't hear that theory and I do see it. I think that could be what this is. It's interesting. Jonathan's interesting. Who knows?
Yeah. They talk about how there's been 3 self-evictions already. Then that's how they describe it. They say it's wild. More people have self-evicted than actual evicted. And then they go on to talk about some of the other people in the game. Hope says he feels Shania is fake. And Jonathan agrees. We get a lot of talk about Shania in this drop. More to come in a little bit. But it does not seem like her social game has been excellent. That there's been a lot of like her and Dan, and not a lot of her and anybody else. Jonathan says he thinks these guys, they think they're the smartest in the room. They have no idea. Trust me. And this again, to me, it certainly implies that he is very confident about who has the HOH, and also could imply that it's Santina and that Santina is tricking them, or that it could just be him and that he's got them. Hope says he almost wants to sit in a room one-on-one with Ty, because Hope is still on this. He doesn't trust Shania. He says, I almost want to sit in a room with one-on-one with Ty and say, let's just, settle our differences and let's get rid of these girls, bro. And Jonathan's like, don't, bro, don't, no. And Hope's like, haha, I love doing that because you hate when I do that. Remember remember the letter when I said I should apologize to Zach and you were like, don't? Jonathan's like, yeah, you shouldn't have, and I'm glad you didn't. He says, I know it sucks sometimes to go against the power, but it's worth it in the end. This guy running around going cheater, cheater, cheater. He got caught cheating like 16 times.
Ball game indeed. I kind of relate to Hope a little bit, not in the I like messing with people with that information, but I'm the type of guy, even if I know I'm in the right, even if I have beef with someone and I'm just like, nope, you did wrong, like you did me wrong, you cussed me out, whatever, I will still want to try and bury the hatchet because I don't like sitting with that feeling of like dissension and like beef. So I kind of hear what he's saying, but I love this method of, let me just put it out in front of Jonathan. And if he says no, I'll be like, ha, I'm kidding. I'm definitely not thinking about doing that. I think Hope 100% wants to feel like there's a clean slate.
Yeah. So I do not know what Jonathan is referring to when he says that Zach got caught cheating like 16 times. He gets interrupted, so we're not going to find out. But this is when Hope says Daniel was trying to tell me something before you came over, but Ty came near us and interrupted us. And Daniel's and Jonathan's like, you? And he's like, yeah, I think he was trying to say either Ty has it or he thinks that you have it. And Jonathan, again, very surprised, is like, he thinks I have it? And he's like, one of those two, either you or Ty. And he's like, okay, well, you find out and get back to me about that. Look, if people want to think I have it, I'll carry that. But I honestly don't. Which again, like, just feels like something that could happen if Daniel had told Jonathan that he was the HOH. And then you'd see this kind of reaction, right? He told you too? Oh no, he didn't. He said it was me? I mean, I guess if the HOH is saying that it's me, I guess I'll take that. I guess I'll pretend that I have it, given that I know it's Daniel. Again, I don't think it's super likely, but not completely impossible given this response.
I feel like in a secret week like this, if there's a foregone target, not so much that everyone wants the same person out, but if it's someone that goes up, say Ty, and everyone's like, yeah, we expected that, you don't mind kind of having your name in the middle of the mix. You know what I mean? You'd be more concerned if it's like 2 people that you did not expect to see on the block, because that'll make people think more. So I could see a world where Jonathan just knows who it is, Taran, and it's not him. I really could.
I could also see a world where it is him and he doesn't actually care if people know, but it's against the rules to tell people. And he would be very happy with Ty and Dan knowing that it's him doing it, but like he's not supposed to tell anyone. So if everyone already thinks it's him, he's like, fine, whatever. I mean, it's not me, but think it's me all you want. So, He says, I really think we're good. And if I've got to take some heat for it, it is what it is. And he goes on to say, man, I will tell you though, Claudia running back to tie disappoints me. And Hope agrees. He says, we're not playing high school here. It's a game. What is she doing? So it's already, I mean, the multiple comments have already been, sprouting around the house about Claudia cozying up with Ty, people being disappointed in it. This is not good for Claudia. Her position, which I thought was very excellent coming out of last week, is somewhat dependent on the ability to maintain good connections to Kuzi and Anika. And also, she had a great connection with Jonathan, which was huge. If she's losing that connection because she's too obviously in with Ty, then, things start to get a little trickier. Because if Jonathan loses a connection to Claudia, that means Jonathan can go to Kuzi. And if Kuzi has Jonathan, she no longer has need for Claudia, who is tight with Ty. And just like that, the entire position unravels. And now she could find herself on the block next to Ty or something like that. And that's not good. So,
or if Ty wins the veto, she goes up if she's not already up.
Right. So we will see about all of that. Kuzi briefly talks to Shania. Kuzi is saying, even if I don't go up, I'm still concerned that I could get backdoored. Shania says, I'm also worried this week. Kuzi says, if it's Johnny, I'll try to squeeze it out of him. And Shania says, Dan told me he didn't have it, but I don't know if he would tell me if he did. So just a brief interaction between the two. I didn't really get much from it. This could be Kuzi pretending she doesn't know, or it could be Kuzi actually not knowing. It's way too brief of an interaction to get much of a read.
Not a lot to decipher, but I would like to let Shania know, don't worry, you're fine. You have no reason to worry of everybody. You're fine.
All right, final conversation from the drop, and it's a pretty interesting one. It's Claudia and Renee in the bathroom, and Claudia says that she thinks it's Johnny. He was just in the pool room with Hope for so long, and then they were outside with Santina. They both agree Jonathan would put up Ty and Dan, and Claudia's not super pleased about that. Renee says that Shania will stick her neck out to campaign for Dan, which is not great, but that could lead to Shania being put up as a replacement nominee if one of them wins the veto, which is not best case scenario, but wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, because then we would have an excuse to vote out one of the guys next to Shania, right? Same sort of deal they had with Rob when it was her on the block. And Renee is saying this, and I'll put this out here early so that you can sort of track it as we go. But Renee's goal in this conversation seems to be that she would love to target Dan next. Dan is her target, and she has reasons for that, which we'll get into. Claudia, her goal in this conversation seems to be, let's not target Dan or Ty. Let's target Santina or Claudia and Anika. That's kind of where she would prefer
Kuzi and Anika.
Kuzi and Anika. That's where she would like to aim her sights. Claudia seems to be leaning toward working with the guys. Renee seems to be leaning toward at least taking Dan out first and trying to maintain the balance that they have in the middle. Claudia says straight up, or Renee says, I'd rather Dan leave before Ty. Claudia says, well, I'd rather have both Dan and Ty here longer than Kuzi, Hope, and Anika. So just explicitly saying what I just said. Renee agrees, but does she really agree? Claudia says she hopes that everyone will just take shots at each other and they can just sit in the middle. And Renee says, yes. Renee says, plus we have Daniel too. And we absolutely want to bring Daniel to the final four, because then we're guaranteed final three. So they want to bring Daniel to the final four. Again, they really see Daniel as part of their four, which is great for Daniel because they are in a power position right now, especially if he's still connected to Kuzi and Anika, which means he can jump ship whenever he wants. Claudia agrees. She says she feels really good about Daniel. Renee says, if we get rid of Dan this week, then maybe we'll be able to get rid of Santina next week and maintain that balance. And because she's also concerned that if they leave Dan around for too long, Shania will be unable to separate herself from him. She had a hard time separating herself from Zach, of all people. So I can only imagine how hard it will be for her to separate herself from Dan. He's going to cloud her game, says Renee. And Claudia's like, I'm with you. I mean, I felt like I was the one who should be the most upset about what happened last week, but she was acting the most upset. But that said, Dan will keep us safe. So I'm not sold on taking him out. And she says, Ty and Dan, they still need us. Our core is us three and Daniel, but Ty and Dan will need us moving forward. So maybe we should not be looking to take them out if we can help it. And Renee says, okay, yes, because Daniel has connections to the other side still. So Renee implies that Daniel is still good with Kuzi and Anika, and they're okay with that because they feel like Daniel will look out for them with Kuzi and Anika, which again puts Daniel in the key position there as long as he's willing to play it. Renee says we have those ties, but we need to stay in the middle. Then both sides can knock each other out. They go on to talk about how the house is like a bunch of pairs right now. There's Kuzi and Anika. There's Jonathan and Hope. There's Ty and Dan. And then there's kind of the three of them plus Daniel, which means that they hold the most power. And they're sitting in the middle as well. They're the biggest group and also the only group not being targeted. They have a lot of power right now. They're recognizing that. This is what I was talking about last week. And so they feel very good about that, and they want to make sure they maintain that, again, that balance. They just seem to have slightly differing views on the best way to move forward to maintain that balance. Again, Renee feeling like Dan should leave, and Claudia feeling like she would love to keep the guys around and target like the Hopes and Santinas of the world first.
Yeah, I feel like if you're looking at it from Claudia's perspective, this sounds good, right? It's 6 people, a pair, the girly pops that are 3, and Daniel that's in the pocket of the girly pops. You get to a 6, you have Dan and Ty that you can get rid of. Then you can get rid of Daniel, and bada boom, your final 3 easy pickings are lovely time to be had. But what I think Claudia is miscalculating here is her getting back closer with Ty and really trying to push against Ty leaving could make her the casualty if Ty is to win a veto. I genuinely could see that. We're like, well, if we can't get rid of Ty, we get rid of Claudia. That severs the tie between Ty and any of the girly pops, anyone else. And that's kind of not a bad spot to be in. I feel like that is a big miscalculation from her side. Renee is just continuing to impress me more and more. I feel like when she's not saying bootay, she's spitting some game, and I do like that. I'm very much.
She did say bootay at the end of the sentence.
She did, and it was whispery, and I didn't like it, but I didn't want to bring it up. But it's like, my God, really in casual conversation? Anyway, this was a very informative conversation, though. Again, the big question mark in all of this is Daniel, because if Daniel is, again, student of the game, right? The very least, we know he watches his feeds, he watches the show, he loves the show. I feel like if he's looking at all these divides and he sees, okay, the 3 girls here want to work with me, you are 4 out of 4 in that group. You do not want to go there. If Kuzi and Anika want to work with you, you are 3 people and you have a final 2 with one of them. That's a better sell. But again, the ideal is you ride the middle, right? No one's going to look at you. You ride the middle. You reevaluate once you're at like final 7, who's left, what's going on and everything. But I don't know. The thing is, we don't know enough about what is going on with Daniel at the moment.
Right now, it's kind of a war for the heart of Jonathan and Hope to a degree. They are 2 people who are, Jonathan in particular. Jonathan has no interest in playing the middle. Jonathan is a side guy. And so you want to be on his side while he is the side, because he will be the target. And whoever wins the allegiance of Jonathan is in the power position in the middle of the game. And so that should be Claudia. She has the better relationship with Jonathan. And, you know, in a world where Jonathan is HOH and he targets Ty and Dan and one of them leaves, you know, for Claudia, Renee is correct. Dan leaving is totally fine. She can retain her relationship with Ty. And if she is able to like avoid cuddling with him nonstop, and making it clear that she's still with the guy, She can also maintain the relationship with Jonathan and keep these two kind of like sides against each other. Like Jonathan and Ty can keep going after each other all they want if they need to. But basically, it's basically Kuzi versus Claudia for whose group gets to sit in the middle. And that's why Daniel is currently in the best position because he's in both groups. So whichever side comes out on top,
he's in the middle of the middle.
He wins. Right.
Yeah.
So right now, if I'm Claudia, the goal is, especially if Ty and Dan end up on the block. Yeah, who are they? I'm with them? No. I came in way before them. I was not with them coming. No. Jonathan, you're the guy.
You're my man.
Because if she goes down with that ship, if she fights too hard to do whatever, then I think she loses Jonathan. By losing Jonathan, you lose Hope. You potentially lose Santina as Santina's not really with anyone at this point. So, just again, trying to loosely piece these things together. I think the key here is just make sure you're riding. Don't get too attached to one particular side. And I think that's like Renee has a preference, but she's willing to ride whatever she needs to. Claudia seems a little too attached to one side, which I get because, yes, Ty and Dan are very valuable to her game, but not if she's too obviously attached to them and not if she ends up going down with that ship. So exactly. Interesting stuff. They do also briefly again talk about how close Zach was to staying last week. Claudia says, I was seriously considering it. Kuzi was really frustrated with us. And now they're not sure what the relationship is with them, between them and Kuzi, because Kuzi, they feel like Kuzi doesn't actually believe that they were going to be with her because there wasn't actually a vote for them to prove that they would have voted with her. So from their perspective, there's a little bit of tension in the relationship between the Girly Pops and Kuzi based on the vote almost flipping last week.
And this week being anonymous makes it difficult because let's say one from either side has power and everyone knows it, they can all get in a conversation to smooth things out. But because you don't know, you're not really going to get those smoothing out conversations. It's going to be very much, let's wait and see what happens with the HOH before we do anything. So we'll see where it goes. A lot of game to be played, a lot of events to go down this week. Will we get any more? Who knows? But here we are, Taran. Potentially in the jury already.
Here we are. All right. Well, anything else to bring up, Pooya?
No, I think we've covered everything. We've talked about some scenarios. We've talked about who the shortlist is potentially for this invisible HOH, and some game movements and pieces. So I'm very satisfied with what we did here today.
All right. Well, that's what we have for you today. Then I will be back in just a few minutes. I'm going to be chatting with Rob, who this week was busy at a live show and came back to Big Brother Canada to hear people screaming about socks and walking and all kinds of nonsense. And so basically, this is going to be me catching Rob up on what happened, but in a podcast.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to find out if he's watched anything, if he's listened to anything, or if he's just coming in completely blind. But it's going to be a great podcast. I can't wait.
All right. So make sure you tune in for that. If you did not catch my podcast with Taylor yesterday, make sure you check that one out as well. We talked about what she's been up to since her season, as well as talking about the live feeds. She is probably the most qualified person to talk about the mental health angle when it comes to the live feeds. And so she had a lot to say about it. I thought she was very, very good. And she also made a brief surprise appearance on our recap last night as well. So check those out. And then we will continue moving forward here. We have been getting some Friday drops on Saturday, Friday content on Saturday for a Saturday drop. So potentially tune in tomorrow at around this time, 3 p.m. Eastern. We will update you on the nominations probably. We'll see if it is Ty and Dan. And then we'll continue on from there. As always, you can find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. We'll be doing some Survivor stock watching as soon as well. And that's about what I got. Pooya, what do you got going on?
Well, people can find me on Twitter at Pooyaism. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Pooya. I will be live tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. Have a good time hanging out. Come through, say I would appreciate it. 90 Day Fiance podcast, going well. And Masked Singer podcast will be recording later today, so that'll be available for you this weekend. And then if you're watching Bel Air, Chappelle and I talk about over on Post Show Recaps. You can find that over there as well. And I've been working on some stuff on YouTube, youtube.com/Pooyaism, if you'd like to check that out.
All right. Well, that's what we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see all of you very soon.